Hi, this is Jonna with Bee's Knees, and today I am going to walk you through assembling these adorable dome candy holders. Now, it doesn't matter which one you purchased or snagged as a freebie because the method and the tips and tricks apply across the board. So let's go ahead and get started. Currently, you could have purchased these files from two places. One, my personal shop, or two, Etsy. A lot of people find me on Etsy, but I'll give you a little hint. Things on my shop are usually cheaper because I don't have to pay the Etsy fees through my shop. I will link both my shop below and also a video that helps you download from Etsy if you need that assistance. Let's talk real quick about what comes with your purchase. So you will notice that I supply two different file types. There is the SVG file and the DXF file. The SVG file will always start with SVG at the beginning. I name it that way so there's less confusion because what an SVG file does is it usually takes on your default internet browser. So obviously mine is Microsoft Edge, but you could also see logos there for Firefox, Chrome, Safari, etc., etc., whatever the default is on your computer. So just look for the SVG and you'll know that's the file. Almost everybody that has cutting software will use the SVG file, but I've also included the DXF file. Why is that? That's because if you are using Silhouette software and you are using the basic free version, so you have not paid for the Silhouette software, then you will need the DXF file. You cannot use an SVG. It will not allow you to upload it. So hopefully with these two files, we have covered all of the cutting machine bases. You will also notice that for the SVG file, not only does it start with SVG, but it also has a size in here. So I have provided the same file, same design, so we have the same bunny in all of these, but he is different sizes. So he comes in 60 millimeters, 70, and 80. And that does not mean that is the size of the bunny. When we refer to that, that means that is the size of the dome that goes in the center, which the domes I use are linked below. That does not mean that you have to only use 60, 70, or 80 millimeter size dome in your center. I will show you in a few minutes what you can do if you have a different size dome. You can easily resize it because it is a circle, but just so you understand, this is what you're looking at and this is what you get in each purchase. I've also included a file with links to my website that walks you through step by step and then also gets you to this video. So you're here, so you probably don't need that. And assembly instructions. If you don't want to watch the videos, don't want to read the website, it's just a quick one sheet how you assemble it. And then also the size. So I'm giving you what the overall size of your candy holder will be if you choose 60, 70, or 80 millimeter dome. So now that we're in the design space, we want to go ahead and we want to hit the upload button. And we want to search for, you've already downloaded your files onto your device, so we want to go out and search and find that file that we want to use. Again, if you're using Cricut, you need the SVG file, and then make sure you select whichever size, 60, 70, or 80 dome that you want to use. Make sure you have the right dome with the right file so you don't waste paper cutting out something that doesn't fit. And we go ahead, we hit the upload button. Then we come over to what we just uploaded, select it, and add it to our canvas. And here we have our little candy holder. This one is sized, again, specifically, I picked the 60 millimeter dome, which is the smallest. It's sized specifically for that. We don't really go smaller than 60 because things can get hard to cut. I mean, you can, feel free, but I don't provide that information because I don't want to frustrate people. And I do not go larger than 80 because usually it doesn't fit on a 12 by 12 piece of cardstock any longer. And again, I don't want to frustrate people. So the 60 to 80 range usually works perfectly. But let's say you have something, let's say you have a 2-inch holder and that's in between these. There is nothing that is exactly 2 inches in the 60 to 80 millimeter. So you can very easily change your candy holder to fit the size of dome that you have. What you'll want to do is you'll want to come over here to shapes, and this is free for everyone, so you don't have to have an access subscription. Select circle. And then we're going to come up here, and this happens to already be defaulted to 2 by 2, but let's say it wasn't. Just come up here and, you know, put in the size that you want. I'm going to take it back to 2 just to show you. And make sure this is locked so your width and your height move together, otherwise you're going to have a wonky circle. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take your circle and you're going to put it over top of your candy holder. And then click off of your circle and onto your candy holder. And again, make sure your width and height are locked, otherwise your candy holder is going to get wonky. And go ahead and resize it so the circle fits perfectly in the middle. There we go. That looks pretty good to me. You don't want to go too small because then your dome won't fit. So I have just changed my candy holder to fit a 2-inch dome. Just know what size your dome needs to be for your circle, and then adjust it, delete it off, and you are good to go ahead and cut your perfect custom sized. I'm going to come up here and I am going to hit the Make It button. I am going to select my mat, and here I'm going to show you 2 things. So first, let's talk cardstock. Cardstock is super important in paper crafting because if you have a cardstock that does not cut well, you are not going to get a good cut. And in these little candy holders, the back, which let's talk about this real quick, is a perforation, but it's not, we don't use the perforation tool. Why? Because that's only available on the maker, and not everybody has a maker, so I want this to be accessible to everyone. So what this is this is just a series of little rectangular cuts. So it's not hard to do. I mean, it works perfectly every time I do it, but if you don't have good paper, it is going to be more difficult. Good paper does not have to be expensive. My favorite paper to use for these is actually the Recollection 65-pound cardstock that comes in like the 50 or the 100 count. You can get them at Michael's. They're usually half off. I mean, you can get them for, you know, a whole 50 count for less than $5. So I'm making these usually in mass quantities for my daughter's soccer team or her class. And I don't want to spend $2 a sheet on cardstock. The fact that it is a lighter weight does not matter because we're layering these pieces up, so it's fine if it's a lighter weight. So this cuts great. Also, one of my absolute favorite cardstocks, which is not as affordable as the Recollections, but it's average cardstock pricing, is American Craft cardstock. You have to order this online. I don't have it available in any local store near me, but if you plan ahead, it cuts beautifully. I use it. They have great textured ones. I love their glitter. So I use it more for accent pieces when I'm making a lot of these, just from an affordability standpoint, but cuts great as well. So going back over to my mat setup, knowing that I am going to try to make these as affordably as possible, and I'm using the Recollections 8.5 by 12, I'm going to come down, or I'm sorry, 8.5 by 11. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to select that size, that letter size. So what that's going to do is that's going to rearrange my mat so everything fits. And you have to do it for each one because maybe I have, you know, for my white, I'm actually using a 12 by 12 and then I'm using letter for the rest. Whatever it is, you have to tell Design Space for each mat what size it's going to be. Let's talk real quick about optimizing space on your mat. Okay, I flipped back to my 80mm bunny for this demo. So what I'm going to do is I'm using the letter sized. So I did that, and you notice when I did that, it took it from 2 sheets to 1, 2, 3. Well, my third sheet here are just these little cute bunny paws. And I'm like, I think these bunny paws could squeeze in to one of these sheets why waste a whole sheet? So, and that's absolutely correct, because Cricut Design Space does not do a good job of optimizing your materials. That right now is not something that the system is programmed to do. So you have to do it yourself. So what you do is the one that you want to move, so I'm going to move these cute little paws, I go up to these three dots and I select Move Object. Now it says, okay, you want to move it. Where do you want to move it to? You can move it to anything that's here. Well, I want to move it to another white one. And it doesn't really matter which one because they're the same size. So I'm just going to select my first one. And you notice it did not move it smartly. If you would cut this, you would cut them both to pieces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on it and I'm going to drag it. And this little rotate button is amazing because I am going to rotate this guy and I am going to squeeze him in. Now I want to keep it within this orangey red line, otherwise, you know, that's how big my paper is. So I'm going to squeeze him in and I'm going to make sure he's not overlapping his big bunny self, and he's not. So I just went ahead and saved a sheet and squeezed him in here. Now you'll see this is still here and it's still blank, but you just don't cut that sheet. So let's talk about cut settings. How do we want to cut this guy out? So definitely always 100% the sheet that has the perforation on it. I use cardstock for intricate cuts. I usually use more pressure just because I'm a more pressure type of girl. And then for this, I click Remember Material Settings. If you have an Explorer, just turn that knob to Custom and go in and find cardstock for intricate cuts. Now something like this guy, because he does have the little tiny mouth here, I would just keep it on cardstock for intricate cuts. It doesn't hurt. If you have something simple like this, then I would use medium cardstock just because it's faster, because cardstock for intricate cuts does 2 passes. Medium cardstock, 80 pounds, only does 1. If you are using glitter cardstock, then you definitely want to select your glitter cardstock and your pressure is more. We are ready to cut and we want to do one of two things. One, we want to make sure we are using the blue light grip mat. Anything stronger, you're going to have a hard time getting that cardstock off. Of course, if you're using glitter cardstock, then you want to use the green standard grip mat, but that is only for glitter. Then when we attach, make sure that this is nice and clean too, so you get a good attachment. So we want to take our paper, we want to put it down, and instead of just attaching it like this, always use a brayer. I use it for all materials I put on a mat, but I feel it's especially important when you're using cardstock. So I go ahead and I brayer that on. So we have our first layer cut out, and what you want to do is you can remove the excess, but then when you're removing the actual piece that you cut, you always want to take your mat and you want to flip it upside down. And instead of peeling the paper away from the mat, you peel the mat away from the paper. This does two things. One, it keeps it from tearing, and two, it keeps it from curling. Now, if you have a very thin cut, like my little snowman here, who has these little tiny pieces, and this is stuck to a mat, then maybe instead of flipping it and peeling it, because you can't really see what you're doing, you'll want to take your little Cricut spatula and you'll want to very carefully work that up slowly. But that's only for the very, very delicate cuts. Another tip to clean the mat, to get all these little perforation cuts out, I take my Cricut extra large scraper and I just go over and I just quickly scrape it all off. I am going to show you how to attach the dome to the candy holder. It can be a tricky process, but I feel like I have a procedure that works every time. So what you'll want to do is you'll want to take your piece, your bottom layer with your perforation, and you'll want to take your second layer and you'll want to put it on top. And how do you know which layer is which? Because two places you can go. You can go to the assembly instruction PDF in your file, or you can go to the assembly short video that shows you how to assemble each one of your cute little candy holders. So when I have those lined up, make sure it's lined up, otherwise you're going to be off. You will just want to take a pencil and you will just want to trace a circle around your dome cutout circle. Next step is to add the glue. And I highly recommend this glue. It's barely art glue. It is not the cheapest glue out there, but I bought this bottle over a year ago. I would say there's about a third left, and I use it every single day to make these and other paper 3D projects. And so it lasts a long time. It dries so quickly, and most importantly, it dries pretty clear, so you don't have to be perfect, because I am not perfect when I do this stuff. So I need something that is going to be forgiving and give me a little wiggle room, and this does exactly that. So basically this glue is frustration free, which is always needed in my life. So what you do is you just take the glue and you outline the circle that you just made. And it has this nice little tip too, which makes this task perfect. Okay, so I have it outlined. Now, if your first base layer is some sort of textured cardstock like glitter, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to put more glue on this, you know, something that the dome can really sink into. And it's also going to take a little bit longer for the dome to dry to it. If you use regular cardstock, in between 1 and 2 minutes, and that is solid and tight. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to fill my dome with my candy, and you have to make sure your candy fits in here, so it can't be over top of the dome, otherwise it's not going to sit flush against your cardstock. And try to make sure there are no little pieces hanging out. So then, holding your dome like this, you're going to take your cardstock and you're going to flip the cardstock upside down onto the dome. And it doesn't have to be perfect, because if you see, mine's not lined up all that great, but that's the great thing about this glue. You can just move it once you have it where you can see it better, and make sure it's over your pencil circle. And again, in 1 to 2 minutes, this is going to be dry. And one more thing to note that's standard with all of these candy holders is when you attach the second layer to this first layer with the dome, I always use these adhesive foam squares. They give it a little pop, and that pop is needed to get you over this little lip right here. You can also try to cut that off, but I've never been that adventurous. So I just use these little foam squares, and that way you're not bumpy, you're nice and level, and you're just sitting up over that little pop out. One other tip to note, if you are using these little foam squares and you're attaching, let's say you put them on the back of this and you are attaching this to glitter cardstock, what I do is once you peel the little protective sticker off and reveal the sticky, this foam square isn't usually sticky enough to stick to glitter cardstock. So what I do is I add a drop of my very favorite glue to each one, and then it sticks and stays no problem. Otherwise, you might have a falling apart situation, which you never want to get into. And I am not going to walk you through assembling the rest of this because everybody has different candy holders. But again, there are candy holder specific assembly instructions written and video. Every single candy holder has a less than 1 minute short that walks you through how to assemble each specific candy holder. So I hope you enjoy making your fun candy holders. And if there's a specific little critter you want to see, just drop me a note in the comments. I take requests all the time.